allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I stumbled in a couple words. Welcome to our September 13th, 2022 Tiverton School Committee meeting. Has anyone signed up for open forum? No. Okay. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Ask for a roll call vote. Mrs. Palish? Yes. Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
I vote yes. Agenda is approved. Item number 6A, new business, request to accept Beuren Grant. Dr. Sanchioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, could I ask the committee to move up item B? We have a representative here from ACT, and I'd like to...
Sure, I'm going to ask for a motion to move up item 6B.
So moved.
Second.
Any opposed? Okay, we're on item 6B, request to accept ACT grant. Again, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as the document in your packet gives you information on, we applied for a grant through the ACT Foundation. As you know, we're in desperate need to replace our scoreboard. You had made a decision earlier in this year to allocate funds toward accomplishing that task. Wow. However, I did indicate to you that we were pursuing all grant opportunities, and we're very fortunate to work with the ACT Foundation. With me today on the left here is Mr. Steve Miola, who represents the ACT Foundation. He wants to present a check for $5,000 to the Tiverton School Committee for the purposes of offsetting the cost of our scoreboard. So, Steve, thank you so much for being here this evening.
Push the button, Steve. There you go.
Welcome. Thanks
Thank you
for coming and bringing the check.
Yeah, so it's not every day that a school committee gets to accept funds, so usually you're giving out funds. So happy to help, and wanted to thank the school committee for passing the resolution and the superintendent for working with ACT to bring this to fruition. I know that you folks had passed a resolution to match our donation of $5,000 with a $20,000 commitment from the school committee to get a new scoreboard. And we were happy to award a few grants to Tiverton Little League, and I know Mike was involved and had mentioned that you folks were in need of this. So happy to present the check to you. I've actually given your superintendent the real check already, but I didn't know if you wanted to take a picture and
Sure.
with the check. And
What I would do first is maybe, well, we need a motion to accept, I think, right? Or did we already do that?
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Okay, and ask for a roll call vote or any discussion from anyone.
Could I just ask, tonight, I've only recently heard about the ACT Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So we are a brand new foundation that started this spring. And there were a group of individuals that put together the foundation because we saw a need, in particular after the pandemic, for nonprofits such as Tiverton Little League and schools where the kids are out washing cars, going door to door, selling calendars, candy, whatever they can to supplement and raise money for whatever sport they're in. So the ACT Foundation's goal is to give kids the opportunity to participate in sports that might not normally have that opportunity, and to enhance the experience for the student or for the athlete if it's a nonprofit, so that they can have a nice experience either by defraying costs at the nonprofit level or providing equipment. And so our goal is really to try and get, you know, everybody nowadays is on their cell phone or their computer or social media. And I think it's a lost art form where you actually can talk to people. And to get kids in an environment where even if they're not a stellar athlete, they can talk to a fellow student and learn how to participate in a team activity, learn how to win and learn how to lose, learn how to get along with others, and to be doing something positive after school rather than maybe not participating. So I was actually just talking to your superintendent about there are other possibilities through the ACT Foundation, because these grants are available between $1,000 and $5,000 per sport. So we don't know how long our budget is going to last, but we had some substantial contribution, and we're trying to extend this to be able to do it every year. Obviously, it's caught on, and we have had several applications from different communities and different nonprofits. But we saw a need. There are a lot of great nonprofit organizations out there. We were lucky enough to get approved by the IRS this year to be a 501c3 with our goals that I had just mentioned to you folks. And hopefully, we can make a difference, and with your help, we can get more people, more kids involved in sporting activities and, accomplish what our mission statement is.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions from any member of the committee? So motion's been made and seconded. I'm going to ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes, with gratitude.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes, with gratitude.
And I vote yes. So again, thank you very much. If you want to take a picture for your...
Yeah, if you folks want to get together maybe and hold the
I
check.
was going to ask for nominations for the most attractive member of the school committee to go up and
Or we
be with
all
you.
go out there and hold the check. Come on, guys.
Okay, I was looking for a way to avoid being in any kind of photo.
Elaine's still trying to figure it out.
I'm just, I just feel you were very good for you. It's like, it's all kinds of.
Come around.
I'm coming. We're coming.
Steve should come in.
Okay, you come in. I'll go to your red line. We good? Okay. Hungry? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is you. Nice to meet you.
It's impressive that everybody here is on election day and you're having a meeting.
Okay. So, $5,000 in the first 10 minutes, so we should have, what, 30,000 by the end of the meeting? By the end of the first hour? Maybe we should have a telethon sometime. So we're back to item 6A, request to accept the Van Buren Grant. Dr. Sanquioni.
So maybe we won't get to 50,000, but maybe 32,800 if you combine the two grants. So I have the opportunity to present to you a second grant for your acceptance this evening through the Van Buren Foundation. They've been very generous to the Tiverton Public Schools in the past. We wrote a grant this year to them asking them if they would consider offsetting the cost of our teacher professional development this year for our middle school and our high school staff, both for their differentiated instruction and for project-based learning. So through a lot of work with them, they evaluated that request. They thought it was a very viable request. They saw the outcome, it was outcome-based, that it was going to really make a difference for our students. And so some people there that I just want to mention their names, Mary Johnson, Grace Lowborough, and Mary Kate Bergen. I've worked closely with all three of them. They're amazing people. They really want to do what's best for public education. And so after all that, they granted the Tiverton Public Schools a grant for $27,800, again, to offset a cost of our professional development.
Okay.
So I ask you to please consider accepting that.
I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the grant.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So yeah, they've been very generous partners for over several years.
Yes.
Any questions or comments from the rest of the committee?
Nothing.
Just one quick question, Peter. It says save a copy and have a signed copy to the foundation office by September 1st. Was there a deadline we missed here or something? or no?
No, I don't think there's a deadline.
Okay.
I mean, they granted us the grant, maybe
Well,
that's.
that's what
the-
I thought, yeah.
Right.
Okay,
And I explained to them that it would go to the school committee for
Okay.
acceptance at some point.
all right, good, thanks.
Okay, anything else? Ask for a vote, Mr. Dakotas? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Sanquioni, I'm not sure if you personally wrote the grant or not. If you did, I just want to thank you. I think that having our administrators, any of the employees involved with the schools, or even some of the volunteers, if grant writing is their talent, you know, I think as a body, we would always welcome grants. And yes, the Van Buren Foundation has been very generous to us for many years, but I just want to thank you for taking the initiative to go out and seek these funds.
Okay. Anything else from anyone? Going once? Okay, I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes, with gratitude.
Mrs. Pava?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
I naturally vote yes. Okay, thank you. So we are up to item 6C, which is, where'd my agenda go? Where did my agenda go? District goals. Dr. Sanquioni.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to present to you our district goals for this coming year. As you know, we work really hard as an administrative team to put these together. And the important part of our goals now is the fact that we align our district to these goals. The district goals become connected to the school improvement plan goals that our principals will write. They'll be presenting that to you at our meeting in October. And then more importantly, they're connected to all the professional practice goals and the student learning goals that our teachers write. And so when you align your district that way, that's where you can put your resources, that's how you connect your professional development, and that's how you build in your accountability system. So it's a pleasure to present this to you. A lot of hard work went into this. So we're going to bring this up on the screen for you. All right. And Jewel, if you can just move it right up to goal 1, we can skip through the statements, the vision statements and things like that. Okay, so the first goal is connecting it to our portrait of a graduate. You may recall last year we went through the process of developing a portrait of a graduate by asking every teacher, every student, every parent in the community, along with community members, to give us their thoughts on what they think a graduate should have, what skills they should possess as they leave our school system. And it was great to see that the 5 that were identified, collaboration, empathy, communication, responsibility, and critical thinking, are really the skills that Fortune 500 companies are looking for. We looked at an article that was written in a Fortune 500 magazine, and the skills they were looking for were identical to the 5 skills that were picked by the Tiverton community. And so the important thing now is not to just make this a poster to be something that we talk about and anything. It's important for us now to incorporate this into every class, every grade level through the school. So through a K-12 experience, we can truly say when our students graduate, they're going to have experiences in these things. Not to say that these are the only 5, but these would be the critical 5. And so that becomes a goal for this year, to see how we can include that in each grade, each course throughout the school system. And we'll just go through. And so goal 2, again, the realization is goal 2, and there's the poster of the portrait of a graduate, is connected to the grant we just received. We wouldn't be able to execute this PD to the high level we did if we didn't have the funding that we received from the Van Buren Foundation. But this year, our PD for our staff is based upon the science of reading training. So every K-5 educator, along with a lot of our special educators, are in the process of taking a 2-year course. Every professional development day we have, the days before school, is dedicated toward teaching our teachers the science of reading and how to incorporate that into their reading instruction. It's required by RIGL for certification. Tiverton's taken the lead on this and making sure our teachers have this requirement met before the due date set by RIGL, which is, I believe, the school year 2025. In grades 6 through 12, where it doesn't have the same requirement of the science of reading training, we're working with them on project-based learning and differentiated instruction. So project-based learning has been with us now for the last couple of years. We believe that anytime we can involve students in civic responsibility projects that actually takes the learning that they're using and applying it to something in the real world, it's going to extend their learning and their mastery of that concept and skill. And certainly differentiated instruction is an ongoing skill we want to continue to develop with our staff and continue to work with them. So that is the training. So every time we have a day off where our students are in distance learning, know that our teachers are in 6 to 7 hours of training on these topics, really boosting their skills and their knowledge base, which allows them to become better practitioners. The thing that we're really proud about is over the past several years, at this time now, we've been training the entire staff on using technology, teaching strategies to improve student achievement, which we've affectionately called the Green Book, and project-based learning. So as a K-12 system, we are really giving our teachers a lot of tools that they can bring back to their classroom to be successful. And I believe that's also generating some of the great results that we're starting to see in this district. Goal 3, well, we can't have a district goal without talking about our budget a little bit. So again, it's always our goal to maintain our most critical part of our budget, which is our staffing. You can see here, and you certainly know these numbers. We went through a couple years where we cut a large number of our staff members, 24 one year, 8 the next year. This past year, we were able to maintain our positions and our personnel. We certainly need to work on our FY24 budget to continue to maintain the personnel we have, and at some point explore bringing back some positions that we feel were critical that have been cut. And again, you know this, and this will be part of the discussion we have later on this evening. When we look at the structural deficit, well, it's right there looking at you in the eyes that we use $1.1, almost $1.2 million this year to balance, to not cut any staff members, but that revenue is one time. So again, that puts us in a precarious situation. Goal 4. And I was pleased that Mr. Dakotas and Dr. Larkin were able to join us at our retreat this year, or our advance as we affectionately call it, because once you have a profile of a graduate, we want to now define what's a profile of an educator and what every Tiverton teacher should look like, the things that we want them to, the skills we want them to possess, the things we want them to do in their classroom, the habits of mind, actionable skills and traits and so forth. So, we work with a team of educators and NEA to come up with a list, and I'll be showing this to you later on this year, of what a Tiverton educator, profile of a Tiverton educator will look like. And, one of the things we connected it to is what highly effective is. So on the rating scale, our teachers always said to us, how do I know if I'm highly rated? And it was always more objective than subjective. We've made it subjective. You want to be highly effective? Boom, here's the list. And we're going to help you get there. So I'll be pleased to show that to you later on this year.
Do you mean the other way around?
I'm sorry, did I speak too quickly?
I think you said it's always been highly objective, and we're making it subjective.
I want it to be objective, yes. So if I said it reverse, thank you for catching me. Yes, it's been subjective, and our teachers have sometimes asked, why wasn't I highly effective? And now we want to make it objective.
Okay. That seems to be
with their
right
input,
direction.
Which has been,
Okay.
Thank you for correcting that. That would have been a
That's
Goal
right.
5 is this is sort of our encompassing goal. These are the things we've been working on for the last 4 years. We don't ever want them to fall off the table. And this is important for our teachers then to write their professional practice goals and their student learning objectives connected to these things that we still value. So again, we're a writing district. We want writing in every course and every grade level, and we expect that to happen. We want technology use. As you know, now we're 1-to-1 K-12. Our teachers also have advanced technology in their classrooms, and we know when technology is in the hands of a well-trained teacher, it can really be a difference maker. Again, we want them to use the strategies, what we call instructional practices that maximize student achievement, affectionately the Green Book. We spent 2 years training our staff on that, and we want them to use it in their classroom because, again, it makes a difference. And for grades 6 through 12, they had preliminary training on project-based learning last year. The training is coming back again this year. Again, thank you, Beuren Foundation, for that. And we want them to have at least 2 project-based learning activities in their course throughout the year. Again, because we know when students are connected to real-life activities, the skills and concepts that we're going to be teaching them, there's a greater chance that they will master them. And then lastly, again, I think it's always important to keep this as a goal in our district goals is our graduation rate. That's a K-12 responsibility. How do we get every student to walk the stage? And we're exceedingly proud that last year we hit that 100%. We'd like to maintain that from now until forever. But we have to have those strategies in place so that no student slips through the crack, that every student's receiving the support they need so they can be successful and graduate in their senior year. So 6 solid goals, a lot of input to create these. A lot of great outcomes will come from executing these, and it's been a pleasure to present them. Happy to answer any questions.
So just to clarify, you're not looking for a vote on this, correct?
I am actually looking for you to
You're
accept
looking
this
for a vote.
because our principals need to present their right to finalize
Okay.
their school improvement plans, and our teachers finalize their goals. So once the district goals are approved, all that falls in place.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the district goals as presented by Dr. Sanquioni, so we can open the discussion.
I'll make that motion.
I will second that.
Okay. So I'm going to open up the floor to the questions and/or discussion on the part of the members of the committee. Mr. Dakotas?
So 98% or more is graduation rate. Other communities around us, any idea if that's in their ballpark?
It ranges. 98 would be the high.
The
I
high,
think, yep.
okay. That's what-
And
that's what-
that's why we want to aspire to something exceedingly high. I mean, we want it to be 100%, but we never want it to dip below 98.
All right. So some might be between 95, 97.
Yeah, or low 90s,
Okay.
like, depending on the community.
Okay,
And
so
again, I'm
not-
talking just East Bay.
All right, so 98 is the top, okay.
It would be the top.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Pava?
I have nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Palish? No questions, thank you. Mrs. Farnworth?
I just want to make an observation as we were, I did a little comparison to these goals versus last year's, and there was a common theme, certainly, and I can understand that. As we've, how many years have you been with us now? This, 4?
Yeah, well, 2018.
I'm into my 5th, yes.
But to me, it makes perfect sense, right, that you're expanding upon the goals that were put in place last year, and actually, in some cases, increasing the expectations, such as the project-based learning assignments going from 1 to 2. So I don't have any concerns with any of these goals. I think they're all great, and I will vote to approve.
Okay. I guess the one thing I took away from the meeting in Newport was I could see this could create a lot of anxiety on someone. There's a lot of boxes to tick here or check off here if you're a teacher. I think in some ways, though, I was thinking that it's probably more a way of trying to understand that you're doing a lot of these things already and perhaps highlighting then for you where you could add to what you're already doing. Is that a fair way of thinking
You're
of this?
referring to the profile of an educator?
No, I think everything. So I was feeling a little overwhelmed as not being one of the teachers, kind of going through some of this stuff, and that was one of the themes that the teachers, it seemed, brought up was, I've got to come up with 3 reading. I forget the exact details, but
You increased it by 1 from 4 to 5. That was the big.
well, it was more that I'm teaching history, but I've got to keep all these other things in my head or kind of work all these things into how I'm teaching history. I don't know if you have any reflection on that.
Yeah, I would say to you, it's a layered approach. So we've had writing across the curriculum in place. I think that was my first year because we knew so we've asked people to have prompts. So at this point, every teacher has 4. So, when we say you're an effective teacher, yes, you have those 4 writing prompts and you're going to execute them. If you want to be highly effective, we're going to layer 1 more on. Same thing with project-based learning. Every teacher, 612, has at least 1 project-based learning. So we're layering on something that they have the skills to do and are just adding to it. So it may not be quite as complex as if you're seeing it for the first time. They've done a lot of this work and they have the training. We're just bringing it to a higher level because we think it makes a difference. Same thing with technology. I think we wrote that you'll demonstrate using technology in 10 lessons throughout the year. Well, over the last 3 years, we've been training our staff on how to use technology, providing them with the technology. I don't think that's very hard. Most of our teachers are using technology often, so to get to 10 in 1 year is not going to, although it seems like we're giving them a big task for this year, it's really just adding a little bit more than what they've been doing.
Okay, thank you. And just to the graduation rate, I know we've been down in the low 90s, so that's a significant improvement.
Yeah.
Any comments from any of our administrators in the meeting? And anything from the internet? Okay, so I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so,
Great. Look
Thank
forward to
you, Peter.
presenting the data on these during the year. Thank you.
okay, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask you to
Yes.
table D, please. At this
Okay.
time, it wasn't listed for executive session where it should have started.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to table item 6D.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion about tabling? I'll ask for a vote. Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so item 6D is tabled.
Dr. Larkin?
Yes, Mrs. Farnworth?
Under old business, I would like to propose that we switch around the order and take 7B before 7A.
Is that a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we take up item 7B under old business before 7A.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll ask for a vote. Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Palish?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so we are on item 7B, financial data report. Ms. Roderick?
Thank you. And before Ms. Roderick goes, I apologize for surprising you with this, and I should, but I really do feel that having this background will help us as we go into the next item.
Absolutely not a problem.
Thank
Not
you.
a problem. Whether I talk about it now or in 10 minutes or 20 minutes from now, I think it's all, we end up in the same spot. So before you, I have a preliminary budget to actual for the year ending June 30, 2022. We are still waiting on the regional allocation. That is imminent. I spoke with Gina at the region. While that doesn't change the bottom line, it does affect several line items as we go across. She's working on it, and will have it to us as soon as possible. We're also, the audit is scheduled for October, and we are in the process of making sure we have all of our accruals and things like that in there. So some of this may change slightly, but I don't expect it to change by much. Hopefully you folks over the weekend have enjoyed your cure for insomnia by looking at every line item. And while we definitely have some overages in some, we have significant underages in other line items. And I feel that we manage the bottom line very, very well, even with the extra expense of the RGB invoices and some unexpected maintenance items. So instead of going through line by line by line, I'll leave it open to you folks to ask me specific questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. So I'm going to open up the floor to members of the school committee. Mrs. Palish?
So I'm just a bottom line type person. So overall, right now, you're projecting that we're going to be slightly overspent by 180, 267?
Yes, and that includes the school committee approved expenses for RGB.
Okay.
And I did sort of a reconciliation
On the
down at the bottom.
Yep, perfect.
That is correct.
So that those we had, so the operating budget was really 402,000 in the good, but we had some unexpected expenses that we said, you know what, we know we're going to have to take these potentially out of the fund balance. Net, we ended up only being in the red by 180, which is
Correct.
really, really well on a $33 million budget. That's incredible.
Thank you. It's definitely a concerted effort by everyone. Again, I want to, Dr. Sanchioni, as well as all the principals and the department heads, they really, I don't want to say have stepped up, but have since, my tenure here as we go along, they've become more and more aware of the financial impact, and they reach out more often. We have more dynamic dialogue about that. So it makes it easier to help manage. And again, some lines are over, some lines are under, but bottom line, I think as a whole, the district has managed it very
Yeah,
well.
I mean, it's not even for people like that aren't math people. It's not even. I mean, it's less than 1%. That's an incredible, you know,
And as well.
control of those numbers. And I understand we have to have that control, but kudos to you and your team and Dr. Sanchioni, your staff and team, because that's incredible that we're that.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Nope, thank you.
Mr. Dakotas?
Well, that's a lot tighter than my household budget, so.
I'm sorry.
That's a lot tighter than my own household budget. So if you want to spend some time with me and help me get to this number.
Happy to do that.
My wife and I cannot get to this sort of number, so.
And, yes.
to-
And again, a lot of the credit goes to the principals and working with me, alternative sources, whether we can apply for a grant or pay from a grant where we otherwise would have had to pay from the general fund, sort of that. So it's definitely a communal effort.
Sure.
So,
Well, coming from the Budget Committee for a couple sessions and hearing a lot of people in the public talk about how big a percentage the school budget is of the town, 65, 70% any given time, this is tough to do. It's like the 100% graduation rate last year. Probably almost virtually impossible to come in on the number, but kudos to everyone, including the administration, to you, to Peter.
Yeah.
This makes me very proud to get this down. And I think as a community as a whole, when we could show our other stakeholders we're willing to dial this in this tight, we're holding up our end of the bargain, I guess. So, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mrs. Pavo?
I just want to say, Amy, that I think it's incredible that if we come in with that much of a shortage in this huge budget, everyone's working together.
They are.
And you're
It's
working
definitely a
very
pleasure.
hard, the administrators, everyone's working hard, Dr. Sanchioni, and I think it's an incredible feat.
Good.
So thank you to
I'm
everyone.
happy to help.
Thank you to everyone.
Okay. Anything else? Mrs. Farnworth?
Before I give all my accolades, I do have one question.
Absolutely.
In this pink box on the last page, you call out casino capital of 200,000.
Yes.
Can you help me understand that?
Yes, so within our, for UCOA reporting purposes, we have to include those expenses in here, which they are, okay? However, because the capital discussion came well after the budget was passed, I have not adjusted the budget column to include any of the allocations from the town for capital.
So does that translate
Yeah.
into us being, instead of 180,000 shy,
We should be in the black.
20,000 in the black?
I will say even, pending accruals and any other adjustments.
Well,
But yes, hardcore, it's $180,000 in the red, and if
If you took out the impact of the casino
Correct.
spending here,
Correct.
Then we're even.
that would
then
be
we're
correct.
pretty much even closer to Mr. Dakotas's goal.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I wanted to show the operations prior to sort of any adjustments for capital and so forth, just so, and also to compare it to the budget that was passed and submitted to RIDE as well, without changing any numbers and to make things consistent. In the end, things might look a little bit different, but for reporting purposes here,
And to be clear, this is $200,000. It's only a small piece of that capital allocation.
That is correct, that
It
we
was only for
expended.
2 items, right? I think it was.
It's actually 4 now, but we are working with the town to send those over.
Okay.
We were waiting on invoices. There were actually, there was an invoice that we forgot to send, that's my fault, but
But really, the bulk of it's going to hit in FY '23.
the bulk of it will hit in FY '23. The remaining 1.8 million, or whatever it is, will hit in '23, correct?
Okay.
So can I just follow on your question before we leave that new item? Because it's not obvious anyway to me. So the $200,617 that is as $2 million, labeled as casino capital, that's money we spent for capital improvements that we're actually being reimbursed for by the town appropriation? Is that how I should understand that?
Those are capital projects that were funded by the $2 million of casino money
Right.
that we originally did not budget for.
Okay.
We didn't know about it at the beginning of the year.
So they're an expense technically, but we're actually going to be reimbursed, and so
Correct.
therefore we come back to being,
It's basically a zero
Even.
effect.
So
on-
really, it could have been 200 on both the in and the out, if you will, just to show it out there.
Right, and that's why I put it in the
because
pink
in fact
box
it was an
as such,
appropriation.
Yeah.
without changing the official approved budget.
No, I understand.
Okay. All right, so we could have created another line that there's an appropriation from the operating budget, but then there was an appropriation of,
Right, in other words, our
the
operating
town council.
appropriation was 32.5 million, and then add 200,000 if you really wanted to compare apples to apples.
Correct. That was sort of the function of that line down
Yes.
below.
okay.
And that means you would have been almost 20,000 in the black.
Correct.
Wait,
Again,
why I'm not an
assuming
accountant.
further audit adjustments and so forth. Correct.
I am, and I don't even look at it that close, but
Okay. Go ahead, you have the floor.
plus or minus 5%, we're good.
Standard deviation, right, Deb?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dan, you still have the floor.
I yield the floor.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that was my biggest question. I think the other things were expenses that we had not budgeted, but, needed to take care of. So to everyone's point, our actual operations came in $402,000 in the black.
353,000? If you look at that first
353.
line.
I'm looking at the first line where it says 32,506 appropriation, 32,104 were our expenses. So then there's 402,044. Am I not reading that right? So the pink
In your
box.
pink box, Amy.
I know, for some reason, my pink box apparently is
That
different
pink
than your
box.
pink box.
That's what my pink box says.
Yeah, the
Okay.
402, the first line.
Yeah, the top
Oh,
line
okay.
is what he's referring
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Yep. That's correct. I had made some
Okay.
adjustments on my hard copy, so my apologies. That's
That's okay.
correct.
All right. So, and then to Diane's point, $180,000, we're actually even with the, okay, good. So, thank you again, great job, and I'm not an accountant. So anything else on this agenda topic from the committee? Does anybody dare ask a question from YouTube or the administrators?
So.
Manny is just
that-
smiling.
I believe at one time, revenue, like yes or two.
Okay.
Yes or three.
So then we are back to item 7A, which is looking again at the structural deficit. So I'll turn the floor to Mrs. Farnworth.
Thank you, Dr. Larkin. Just to remind everyone on the committee, we had set out a goal of having these discussions beginning in August. And the September goal is to review data and identify pain points. So really, tonight, all I would like us to do is have Ms. Roderick, if she's ready, to explain some of the data that has been included in your package, and then we can begin our questions and discussions.
What page are we starting with? Just so
Yeah.
I'll be page 5?
I'm going to say in your packet, it's
Page
under
5.
7A, page 5, yes.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to call the document up on the screen. If,
One more. Oh,
No, go back.
she's got everybody telling her what to do.
Yep.
Too far.
One more. One more.
There we go.
Keep going.
No, keep going.
Keep going. Stop.
Winner!
Thank you, Julie.
So this is the completed format that Mrs. Farnworth had asked us for a 5-year historical of, easy for me to say, appropriations, our entitlement grants, what our total operations would be, deficit surplus, and then any sort of one-time funds that we use to balance the budget. So in this particular, I don't know if you can see over to the right, there were 2 years in the last 5 years where we used almost $2.1 million in Medicaid funds. In terms in the last 3 years, we've used about $2.5 million in COVID funds, and then the remainder of, I guess, the gap is filled by the fund balance, although in FY21 we actually had a surplus, so that offset that a little bit. So before I go to the next slide, I didn't know if anyone had any questions.
Any questions, Ms. Palish?
So column 1, 2, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Just what it's labeled.
Those are deficits.
In each year, it was a
Yes.
deficit, yes.
Correct.
So accumulated structural deficit, okay.
And really, that's just here's the impact of what we've been doing here over time. It's not to say that we're in the hole.
We are not in the hole by $6 million,
Not
but we've
by any
had
stretch.
to come up with roughly $6 million of alternative funding sources in the last 5 years.
Over the course of that period of time.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot.
You know, when you're, I'm sure the committee understands this, but for the public, when you're, have a structural deficit of, $1 million or $1.5 million every year, it quickly adds up to multiple millions in total, so.
And you can equate it to running up your credit card,
Right,
really.
it's exactly right. It's exactly right.
And and that was kind of what I wanted to point out, is that 6.7 million, that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. And thankfully, I'm sorry.
I was going to say 6.7 million over the of
That's the structure.
unfunded expenditures over the course
Well,
of
right,
4
that we
years,
funded with
essentially.
one-time
Right,
resource,
right.
one-time revenue. If the one-time revenue is gone, that's your deficit.
Right.
If we continue to run up the credit card debt.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you
So,
go- Oh, I'm sorry.
you go ahead.
So I was going to move on to the next page, unless you had a question, Dr. Locker?
I was just going to give everybody an opportunity to ask a question on
Sure.
each slide in case there are.
How about everyone, just if you have a question?
Yeah,
just
okay,
yell.
just chime in.
Chime in.
Then I'll chime in. So the column labeled surplus deficit, those are in parentheses. In the balanced net surplus deficit for operations, surpluses are in parentheses there, actually not.
Yes.
Okay.
In order to make the math work, to have the last column come out to 0.
Right. Okay.
Those were funds that were injected to the deficits in order to bring us to 0. So they're positives, if
Right.
you will.
Maybe in column just, and not, going forward in columns 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, just have the deficit up above, have brackets.
Good idea.
Okay, will do. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this page?
No.
Okay, let's move on.
Helpful.
Go to the next page.
10-year appropriations history.
So these, through FY21, this was all taken from the audited financial statements. And so I guess it's pretty much self-explanatory. It's only in the last, for FY22 and FY23, that we were awarded a 4% increase from the town, although back in FY20, it looked like there was, if you go by round numbers, a 6% increase. I guess they, well, actually, in FY20, that quote-unquote 6% is not, I don't know what you would call a true 6%, but that $24,867,000 Our state aid had gone down from what was initially expected, but the town is required to make that up.
Yeah.
And so that was part of it, but that also includes the $216,000 that year in capital. It's recorded as an additional appropriation. And then we have, as you can see, the state aid, it was going up consistently, and then in FY22, it was cut dramatically. This year, it looks like it's going up again, thankfully. Initially, we didn't think that was going to be the case. So other than FY20, where the overall budget increase was 6%, our net, or our net increase has been averaging between 1% and 2%, again, but for FY20 and FY23 projected.
So I have questions about going back to the FY20. So you say 6%. So when that happens, is there an actual decision on the part of the town council or somebody, or is it the treasurer?
That was the petitioner's budget,
That
yeah.
was the, yeah.
No, I know that was the petitioner's budget that was sort of in our favor, but there was also a drop in state aid, so some of that 6% apparent increase is actually.
There wasn't a drop in state aid that
No.
year.
Oh, I
That
thought that's what
No.
that's what Amy
It was
said.
the following year,
The following year.
So FY21?
22.
22.
Oh, 22. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
22 is dropped.
So,
All right,
Dr.
all right, that
Larkin, my understanding is that in speaking with the treasurer, that there, I'm not sure if it's a statute or a RIGL decision, and I can get you the source of that, that if the town votes a certain dollar amount in total, and the
Correct.
components of that are obviously broken up
Yep.
between state aid and the town, if the state aid changes
Right.
negatively, the town is still required to fund that
Right.
total.
Right.
So part of that 24,867 is a result of that, to the tune of just over $300,000 that year.
So the projected state aid was probably 7.343
Correct.
that
Or
year.
seven.
Oh,
yes.
so, okay, all right.
Right.
So that is what so I did understand that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Not that the overall state aid went down, it was just that the projection was different. So
Our
that the
initial
appropriation-
expectation, and then the final appropriation voted by the General Assembly was less.
All right,
Right.
and then I guess it's just sort of a curiosity about accounting. So then does the treasurer just automatically take that out of the town's surplus?
They have to, yeah.
General fund, they have to, yeah. Okay,
But we do, she and I do discuss it. I don't just send her a bill for the difference. We talk about it to make sure that
Right.
we're on the same page.
okay. And so the 6% you said was not a true 6% then because of capital appropriations that were made independent of the operating budget?
Correct. But for consistency purposes, I took the same line on all the audited financial statements.
Okay.
Which basically says, this is how much we got from the town, period.
Okay. And that 24,867,752, those capital appropriations are in that number?
Correct.
Okay. How do you keep track of all this stuff? Okay. Anyone else with any questions about this page?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to
Comments.
call attention, that, and this is something that I feel always deserves and needs to be highlighted, that in the fiscal years 2016 through 2019, while we were enjoying small increases in state aid, the town contribution did not increase at all in those years. Not at all.
That is correct. And so, and I think it's also notable or important to point out that the FY21, that was the COVID year. So,
It certainly was. It was the COVID year, and it was the
Yeah.
year the Budget Committee voted
Right.
a zero increase for us
well,
as
they initially voted 2%, but then in September they voted 0. And
Right.
2% first.
yeah,
And then they went back and changed it to zero. That was the final vote.
Right.
And it, I think it continues
But that was based on.
to impact us.
And that, exactly, and that was based on projections that revenues would be down, but actually they were up.
Right.
So, for the town as a whole. Okay.
I just
Yep.
want to point out too, because I know, this gets talked about. We just talked about how if the aid is less than projected, that the town makes it up. I just want to point out FY '22. So while the town, the people, when we say the
Us?
town, we mean the people. While the taxpayers gave us a generous 4% increase, I do want to note that the state aid came in at negative 8%, which gave us an overall increase in 1%. So you really have to be careful that you're looking at our total appropriation, because when you hear 4%, well, you got 4%, we gave you 4%, yes, but the state actually went negative, went down, so our net was only a 1% increase. So it's real important to be looking at just the full picture. This is I like this this chart.
It's really helpful. No, and that's exactly right. It was great that they, kind of approved a 4% increase, and the whole thing got eaten up basically by the drop in state aid.
And I think, just for the purposes of us, as we look at the pain points or the reasons why we're in a deficit situation, is just to look at that very last column on the right? Let's not even talk about the town versus the state or what have you.
21101.
At the end of the day, that's
Very small increases, with the exception of 2020, which was the petitioner's budget, and 2023, in which the Budget Committee granted us a 4% increase, and we will also see an increase in state aid.
Right. However, initially,
Well, the
we weren't
Budget Committee recommended, the people voted for it, let's be clear. We do still have a financial town meeting, or a referendum.
Oh, sorry,
Right.
didn't vote.
I did it once.
The Budget Committee did generously recommend, and the people approved. Not that they had a choice, because there was only one, but still, let's give
Well, there
give
was
our
no-
taxpayers credit. They
There
didn't
was
put
no
in an
partic-
alternate.
Right, there was no petitioner's
There
budget.
was no alternate, so.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I could just
Yep.
make sure, I know we'll talk staffing momentarily, but it's important to recognize the impact of these budgets. As Ms. Farnworth pointed out, 16 through 19, there's the zeros there, and there's a lot of catch-up. But, 21, that's the year we cut 24 staff
Yep.
members, and 22 is when we cut 8 more. So there's an impact there. You may think this budget is balanced and we're doing well, but, 32 staff people were eliminated over 2 years as a result of lack of funding through many years. So the impact, doesn't always get spoken to when you're looking at the numbers, and I think that's important for us to remember.
Well, yeah, you think about it, inflation in all those years was probably 3-4%, at a low.
Boston
And so if
contracts
you're-
were going up 8%.
Yeah, contracts are going up 8%, other things, so you're not even, you're just not keeping up with your costs, and something has to give.
Exactly.
Okay. Any other questions on that page? Okay, next.
Okay, good. So here, again, most of this is fairly explanatory. We start with our, a beginning fund balance and Medicaid balance, and detailing our additions to and reductions from both of those. At the end of FY '22, as you can see, we're expecting, well, I had temporarily put in that $20,000 surplus, so that our fund balance remains just over $1 million. We did not have to use any Medicaid this year, thankfully, and so that is up to about $675,000, although roughly 20 or 25% of that has to be held in reserve by regulation. So that entire amount is not available to us, but and I do have in another slide, as I think I've presented in the past, I do have the details as to what accounts for the reductions and so forth. But for summary purposes, I just put the total for that given year.
FY '22, 2350, didn't we just say it was 180 negative?
So at the time that I prepared this,
Oh, okay.
so, you know, that again could go up and up or down
Sure.
slightly.
It just caught my eye.
Yep.
I was like, wait a minute. Okay.
I'm
So-
happy to answer any questions.
Just back to that last, I just put in the town appropriation of $22,974,050 in FY14 into a inflation calculator for 2022, and I got $28,741,920 for whatever the inflation calculator is worth. So it's a $3 million delta.
Even if it was 3% a year, never mind the current inflation rate,
Yeah.
it would
Right.
still go up significantly.
But yeah, that's a whole different animal.
I know.
So this chart, if you look at FY19, you see those big hits, you see those big reductions. Can we go back one chart? You see FY 14, 15, so 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, where you're at 21110. That's what happens when you go to the next chart. We simply had to either lay off a bunch of staff, that year, or we had to start doing that. And that was a result of that there were just too many years of not getting a predictable higher increase, at least up with inflation.
So I would like to mention that in FY19, the 2.9 million also did include some of the capital improvements to the high school.
Right.
That was not strictly operational,
Right.
the roof. Yes, but I believe on, I think the next slide perhaps, or,
Remember those? Yeah.
And the pointing.
Right.
I'm sorry, the slide on page 5, it shows that we did use 1.1 of that 2.9. In addition to the Medicaid of 1.5 to balance the budget.
Thank you, Amy.
And I think too, just for our recollection, especially since I still remember the meetings focused on this, our special ed costs took a big jump
That year.
in FY19 as well. So that's
5%.
a piece of this too.
Absolutely. And that, my understanding, I was not here in 2019, but my understanding is that was the reason for the big draw on Medicaid at that point, was for
Right.
special education.
Yes, it was.
Correct. One of the things from a budget perspective that we were doing back then that hopefully we've changed is if there was going to be a special education increase, we would net the Medicaid drawdown with that number so that it wasn't transparent really even to us of what was going on. And that year, there was such a big netting that I think, but when we figured it out, I think you had just started, it came as a bit of a surprise. So anytime, I believe we're not doing that anymore, because that's what happened is there was this huge jump. We net out this one-time revenue source. Looked like it wasn't going to be a big jump, and it really was not transparent to all of us and to the budget committee and to the public that we're going to be in trouble.
Right.
So to the point of, trying to identify some of the issues as well, I think probably looking specifically in sort of the way these tables are at probably special education costs and how those have gone up.
At some point, yep.
And I'd probably throw in there transportation.
Well, if you look at our October schedule, Dr. Larkin.
Okay. I'm just putting that on for the October schedule. So transportation, I would say.
Special ed.
is-
Well, and that's the time. If there's
And-
anything anyone wants to see,
Yeah.
this is the point of this meeting.
Okay.
So I would like to point out, we did have, again, due to our friend, I use friend loosely, COVID, in FY20, due to some of the service models, our special education costs actually went down quite a bit, because a lot of the service models, from my understanding, were delivered virtually, so that the billing rates were significantly different than the in-person service rates. And so At the time, at the end of the year into the beginning of '21, when I was speaking with Gina from the region, she's like, I'm still expecting more money to come in, and it just never happened. And again, that was a function of COVID, and that is, I think, officially a blip in the special ed expenses.
So did our statewide transportation and out-of-district tuitions similarly
That's what
improve, or kinda
that's
go
what
in line?
I'm
That's mostly what
using
you're
special
talking about?
education sort of
Okay.
universally, so those would be encompassed into
similar.
the special
Okay.
ed, yes.
Oh, and I just looked at your data request for 10, 11, and those are good. We're going to talk about personnel, special ed, transportation, tech, inflation-impacted items, and other. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions before I move on?
The only one other thing I want to point out with the Medicaid fund balance is that I'm seeing the additions are all in the range between $250,000 and $300,000 a year. Is that a decline over the previous years? Do you know that off the top of your head, or is that something you'd have to come back?
I can look that up in very short order if you'd like.
I mean, I know we've gotten the copy of the reconciliation on several occasions, but for some reason, I'm thinking that we've been getting less in Medicaid reimbursements, and wondering if there's any way that we can control our own destiny there by finding ways to increase those reimbursements.
So bear with me. So I'm pulling up that reconciliation.
Thank you.
I mean, isn't it a function of just who
Services.
Yes.
services?
Who
Yes.
gets
and
services
yeah.
and who
And what parents will allow us to claim it.
provides.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so if I go back to, I'll go back to the same year that was on our comparison, 2014. At the time, that was, we received $319,000.
Oh, so it's not crazy.
The following year was 276,
Oh.
267, then it went up to 300. It kind of stays in the 250 to 350
300.
range, and that is dependent upon services that the children receive and those that are Medicare eligible for reimbursement.
So these numbers are not out of whack?
They are
at
not
all?
out of whack.
Okay,
Not at all.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I don't know if Dr. Sicchioni wants to speak to enrollment?
Sure,
And
I
then I'll
just
pick
use
up
the
FTEs.
reported amounts on October 1st. It's a pretty simple chart to follow there. It's the number of students on site, which would be K through 12. Any students we take in for our CTE program is a limited amount there. You asked me to also put in our alternative placements. There's numbers there, and then total. I would say to you, though, the FY22, the 1650 is a misnomer in a lot of ways. That was the big COVID year. A lot of parents kept their kids home. Homeschools were up, substantially that year, and you see kids coming back to school in FY23. So,
These are the October 1st numbers, you
yeah,
said, Peter?
on the
Okay.
the on-site is
Students
the
on
October-
site?
Yep.
So I guess I would like to, again, as one of the things for October, the number of student alternate placements, the numbers look, like they're getting better, really circling a mean, I guess. But the cost associated with each of those, because I think that can fluctuate quite a bit.
Oh, absolutely. 5%
Yeah.
sometimes a year that goes up.
Right? Not individual tuitions, but sort of the total.
We can show you the total cost
Yeah.
over a 5-year history.
And Dr. Sicchioni, the students in the alternate placements column, are they entirely alternate placements that are not CTE, or
No, those are specifically special education.
they were all special ed?
Right, so day programs or
Aren't we, I mean, for example, the kids going to Rogers or the Met or any other CTE programs that we're paying out, how is that reflected in
so
here?
it's not, because we don't report those to RIDE. Those become part of the district that receives them. We can
Okay.
give you those numbers if you're looking for.
No, they're not considered quote-unquote our student data
No.
at that point, even though we are paying for their education, and that
Yeah, that's
increases our cost
it's
per
an interesting
student.
system, right? I've
That's
had
correct.
my complaints to RIDE about that. Not only do we pay the tuition, but then the receiving district also gets the payment for
State aid
having additional
associated.
students on their rolls. Never
And
quite
it
seen
shows
anything
our
like it,
per
but
pupil costs higher as a result.
our per pupil goes down, their per pupil goes up, so they get to claim the student as per pupil, and we also pay them tuition.
So they're sort of scalping our state aid when
Yeah.
they take the per pupil.
The funds
Not to
follow the
mention the
student.
fact that, well,
It's a double hit.
but yeah, I know, the funds don't belong to the student, frankly.
No, they don't belong, but they follow the student.
That's why my point is they shouldn't be following the student
Well,
because the per
agreed.
pupil doesn't
Absolutely.
reflect the true cost of any given
No,
Agreed.
student.
the per pupil is that
That's what I
number
mean,
should
that's why I
have
think
never.
it's not like it's their tuition money to spend is whatever way they want.
Correct.
That's the fallacy of the system. But then it sounds like they also get another multiplier in their state aid calculation because they count that kid even though they've already stolen our state aid from us. And I will say it's stolen because I don't think there's any other way to put it.
Right.
Well put.
It's a double hit for us and a double plus on the
Yeah,
other end.
Nice.
Peter, for our October 11th discussion, could you add in the transportation placement 5-year? Like, we can talk about that when we talk about special ed costs.
Transportation's placement?
Not alternate placement, sorry.
That's the statewide transportation, isn't
You
it?
No,
want the costs.
alternate placement
Alternate
costs.
placements.
Transportation.
No.
Oh, you.
Costs.
Cost. You got it.
Yeah.
So
We
take
could
those
probably
num-
talk about it with special ed, maybe.
Yeah, we have, so the numbers there, for example, FY 23, 34, you want to know what that cost us?
Yeah, just give me a 5-year history or
Sure.
whatever you're giving
Yeah,
on the 11th, give me that too. I don't, okay. Oh, where are we?
So,
Oh, I do have one more question, I apologize.
sure.
So for FY '22, and again, understanding that this is the October 1st snapshot for each year, are you telling us that you anticipate to have an increase of nearly 200 students in our schools this year?
Right, but I would
By
tell you
October
that
1st?
FY '23, that number is not representational. I would go back
It's actually
to
going back to where we were.
FY '21 and say that we're up, 50 kids.
So is 1803 accurate?
As of today, it is. It's not October 1st yet, but I took the enrollment as we had it when we
So-
created this chart.
Then is last year's 1,600 correct as well?
Well, it was at the time.
At the
That
time.
was what it was
Remember,
October 1st.
we had so many students stay home. We typically have 30 kids homeschool. We went to 110.
But that was, I thought, in FY '21 that took place.
No.
No? I mean, we were open for business last year.
Right, we had a lot of people stay home.
They weren't comfortable coming back
No.
yet.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Singh, many of those, in addition to the homeschools, were part of the Rhode Island Connections Academy, correct?
But they would be in there.
They would be in there.
Yeah, they're
okay.
still ours.
Okay, so FY '20 ended June of 2020. Okay, so FY '21 is where the hit for homeschooling I would have expected to take place, but I see an increase. Does that make sense? I mean, that's to me where we had a huge numbers of homeschooling, was in FY '21.
I'll check the numbers a second time. I'm
Could
pretty sure
you-
those are accurate, but sure, I'll go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they just
to your
come right
point.
off the RIDE website,
Yeah,
right? Huh.
it's not
Yeah,
making
double
sense.
check, and if you need to bring it back.
Absolutely.
That's what we'll do. Because that was the whole point, right, is if we need corrections or changes, we'll just edit this
And
deck.
again, yeah, this is for our discussion so that we can maybe make some decisions eventually, and we want to, make sure we're all on the same page.
Oh, wow, look at this one.
Absolutely check it.
Okay. Everybody good? Move on?
Okay. Do you want me to speak to FTEs or you want to?
Oh, no, yeah.
Okay. So for consistency's sake, I just want to give you a quick blip of background. In order to, sometimes there are staff changes throughout the year. We have, a teacher who leaves and there may be a period of time, a short period of time before we get a replacement teacher. So for consistency's sake, I took the FTEs off the very last payroll of the fiscal year. Because basically that's when the numbers or the number of staff stop rolling. So, and I did that for every year here. What you see here are the positions, as Mrs. Farnworth requested, by school, as well as central administration, and then the total. So that includes, it sort of correlates to the chart we looked at earlier that had the appropriation plus our entitlement grants, because we need those entitlement grants to continue our operations or to operate effectively. And so this history here represents that. I did take the liberty of adding another, going to the next page, which kind of correlates to this a little bit. God bless you. I took the liberty of adding one-time funds and the number of positions that were paid for through COVID funds only. So to show that in order to make up for some of those cuts from the operating budget, we dipped into COVID funds in order to do that. And then the total FTEs down at the bottom is the combination of the first chart plus the one-time funds.
Yep.
It also, in my mind, it made it easier to keep track of.
So can I be the first to thank you for doing that?
You're welcome.
Because I think this tells the story better than anything.
It does, so that
Breaking it
18
out.
of our positions, over the last 2 years have been funded by COVID at a minimum.
Right, and COVID money won't be there
And
forever.
COVID money won't be there forever.
Be the next year.
We have until September 30th of 2024 to finish spending ESSER 3.
We spent it.
But we spent it, so.
But we spent it.
There will be, I think there'll be some small revisions, from where things finally landed, but in the end.
We won't miss out.
I beg your pardon?
We won't miss out on it.
We won't miss out on it. No, we will. The ladies, a little humor here, the ladies in the office accuse me of looking for the pennies under the cushions. So we try to make sure we don't leave any money on the table whatsoever. So I will leave it at that and leave it open to questions for you at this point.
So the bottom line for that is, and maybe you get to that. Oh, you do. Is that we have over 18 positions that if without some sort of funding that we will need to cut in order to balance the budget.
Correct.
If things stayed just where they were.
If they stayed where they were, correct.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may make one point as well.
Sure.
It's clear that all of the schools and the central administration as well have realized decreased numbers in the last 5 years, particularly Tiverton High School.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's a big drop. Is it impacting the education that our kids are getting at the high school? Or have you found new ways to deploy people?
Yeah, certainly it's impacted. I mean, anytime you eliminate that many positions, and, just off the top of my head, I can think of, the food culinary program is no longer there. We used to have a program where students who needed additional assistance in math and reading, we had a teacher who would deal with that. That person's no longer there. There's been cuts in special education. We've combined classes and things of that nature. English, right, we cut a guidance counselor, thank you, Mr. Dakotas. English, we've cut 2 English teachers over the last couple of years, and in that area, there's been a couple electives that have been dropped, and class size has gone up. So,
There's definitely been an impact.
there's been an impact, right, there absolutely been an impact.
It's a 24% decrease in the staff.
And we haven't seen a 24% decline in the last 5 years at the high school of students. We've seen a small decline, but not.
Yeah. No, it's actually reversing itself now. People are coming back.
Well, that begs the question that I have. Certainly, the town is grappling with the potential for new building, right? There's that oft-talked about development on Sousa Road and 200 and whatever units, I think it's 275, was it? And, I'm hearing and I haven't been attending the planning board meetings, I just don't have the, fortitude, but I'm hearing that the developer is estimating a low number of students, and I would beg to differ in that opinion, that if that development does indeed come to fruition, that we will suddenly see pretty good size influx of student. Would you agree?
Absolutely. We did a calculation on what we thought it would be. I will provide the school committee with that document. There's a formula you use, number of bedrooms, things, the kids who move within town, but then people who come from out of town, so I'll share that with you.
Yeah.
It was over 100 students.
So if we find ourselves in a position of taking in more students and we don't have the budget to increase our staff immediately, how's that gonna?
Increase class sizes.
Class size, yeah, exactly. There's only other alternative.
Okay.
So I do want to say, playing the devil's advocate, having been on here for 12 years, that there certainly has been discussion that, well, yes, you're only looking at 5 years of enrollment, but if you go back and look at 10 years, 11 years, our enrollment has declined. So possibly some of those positions that we eliminated, maybe, some of them, we could shrink staffing size because of some of those decreases. And that may be true, but I will say that we're seeing that reverse now. So while that might have been true at one time, and maybe there was some attrition that was due to those, first, 14 through 18, 19, but that is certainly not the case now. So if there was any that we could, decrease because of that decrease in enrollment, that is no longer the case. That is no longer, it is flipped, it is going up now. And I just wanted to make that, because I have heard that point before.
Well, I think we'd also have to do a similar analysis of the full-time equivalents and numbers of teachers at each school in order to, if you're going to go back and say, okay, the number was, 20,000 students in 1999, you'd also have to see what the changes in staffing were.
Right, and I don't want to go back.
If you're going to make that
I don't
argument.
want to go back
Yeah,
more than 5 years. I think 5 years is plenty,
Well,
and it's now going up. But I have heard that, and so my point was just if there was any truth to that, well, we have taken care of it. We have adjusted, and any decreases now are not because of that. Was really the point.
Okay. Understood. Any other questions or comments from anybody else on the committee? This is going to be.
I do want to, again, thank Ms. Roderick for providing the data. I think we've had a very good discussion this evening, and hopefully everyone has a clear view of some of these large issues, right?
Don't we have one more?
We
One more what?
can.
One more chart.
We can go over that if you'd like.
Sure.
Amy?
So this, we continue. There we go. So this is a summary that Mrs. Farnworth had prepared based off of some detailed information I provided, I don't know how many meetings back now. So this was a high-level, I guess, attempt to see at what point, given specific constant percentages, we would potentially be, quote-unquote, out of the structural deficit, for lack of a better way to put it. Mm-hmm. And so this basically says if we are able to hold salaries, benefits, and so forth to an average of a 2% increase per year, and then like property services and some equipment and supplies, which we know our buildings, need some additional help. If we were to hold those percentages in those categories every year, we would, and if state funding remained the same, and if we were to receive a 4% increase from the town every year, by FY '27, we would, even though here it's a small surplus, I would say we would break even and be quote-unquote out of the structural deficit. This is just more for,
And I
then
know,
it-
Diane, next meeting, we're going to actually dig into some of those increases, but I thought
And
this was
this- and
important to at least understand it before we go into next month's
yes, and
meeting.
the percentages are the same across every year.
Yep.
And then at the end, of course, it shows you the 5-year increase.
Yep.
And, in terms of property and equipment and supplies and so forth, and property services, again, obviously, our facilities and so forth are in need of help, as are supplies for the students and all of that. So that's why I estimated a 5% increase. However, each year, the average increase across all categories is 2.17, almost 2.2% in total. And again, this is just to demonstrate if we were able to even hold the overall budget to a 2%, a 2.1 or 2.2% in total, regardless of what we did in the different categories, and we were able to receive a 4% increase from the town with flat state aid, in 4 years, we would be back to an even footing.
Okay, that's good.
And with the uncertainty of inflation not going anywhere, the cost of fuel, electricity coming 20-something, 30% increases, so
Bus contracts, transportation.
transportation, I mean, everything.
Those fall under some of the property and supply categories, so.
All right. So 5% might actually be underscoring what it could be, honestly.
It could be low.
Could be 7, 8%.
It could be 7 or 8%, yeah.
Inflation's 8.3%,
3%,
or 8.5,
right.
right? So
And is that my understanding, that at the next meeting, once we talk about those major drivers, we'll come to some agreement on what we think that percentage will be, and then we can just plug it in there?
I'm happy to do that.
Was that your thinking, or?
No.
No? Oh, okay, what were you thinking?
I mean, as of today, inflation published, as Mr. Dakota
Yeah.
said, was 8.3% on average. And I don't know if we want to go down that road yet, but at some point, we are going to have to consider that, because our 1%, 2%, 3% average CPI change year over year is now drastically different.
I mean, they're talking about 20-something% electric bill. I mean,
Yep.
that's going to affect us.
The 8.3% is the average of all the purchasing or all the consumable categories. But yeah, fuel oil, utilities are in the double digits. I was actually just reading an article this afternoon about that. It's crazy.
And there's just so many variables.
So
many
what
variables.
were
There really
you
are.
thinking for the next discussion, then?
So for if you look at the agenda, right?
Yeah.
Our October discussion is to take a closer look, a more in-depth look at the expense drivers.
To see if we can control
And,
them, or just understand
Well,
them?
to understand them, make sure that we're all having the same level of understanding of what's impacting our budgets. And Amy, I did not recommend any kind of a format here. This is really, I think we need to talk about our personnel costs. We have 2 contracts currently up for negotiation.
Being negotiated,
right?
correct.
We have, we need to talk about if we have any staffing needs that aren't being met right now that we have to consider. We need to talk about special education. We always do every year, but we have to talk about it consistently. Transportation, again, and it's all listed. Do you still have this?
Yep.
I do,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Transportation, we all know how much of a huge increase that was with the current contract. And so let's, it's a piece of the issues we're encountering.
Correct, and the increase year over year is tied to the
CPI.
change into CPI, yes.
I knew that was coming.
So, yep.
Yeah. And then, of course, technology, right? We're education now, even since I joined this board, the integration of technology into education, night and day. It's something, you don't go back from that. You can't.
Correct.
To educate today's student, they have to be fluent in technology.
Correct.
And so, but there are costs to that, and it's something we have to be cognizant of and have a discussion about. And then, of course, those inflation-impacted items, the utilities, et cetera, even food. What's our cafeteria services going to look like after inflation impacts?
And they also negotiate their union contracts with their staff, of which we are not party to, have no control over.
Right.
So.
Right, and I think Mrs. Polish mentioned one other item earlier that she wants to talk about, and that was
Alternative placements?
alternative placement. And that could be part of the special ed discussion. Yep.
And then probably, Peter, the students coming into the district will be part of it too.
Coming in or going out?
Well, coming in from like developments.
Oh, okay.
Once we
Yep.
get to, probably not for October, I would probably say we'll start
November.
doing that when we start modeling.
And that would be something that we would tackle in November.
Yep,
As we
sounds good.
propose and debate solutions, we can, actually, my hope is that we can, run a model on the fly, if you will, where we say, well, if we can hold professional and technical services to 1.5%, what's the impact? Or if we have to increase our supply budget by 10%, what's the impact? And so it's my hope that in November, we can have that type of a discussion after we've spoken about, tonight we spoke about our appropriations, we've spoken about our fund balances, and so, we have a really good handle on what's coming in. And next month, we talk about, some of the expenses that we're tackled with, who knows if any of us will have any bright ideas on how to control any of that. And then November, let's put everything together and start developing, hopefully, what can be a plan that can be something that can set us on the pathway to get out of this deficit situation.
More money.
Well, it just can't continue indefinitely, right? The one-time sources, that's the definition, one-time sources. We've been very fortunate so far.
So far.
Yeah.
Can't count on that luck forever.
And unfortunately, we do have like the MPA and we have the bidding process and so forth, but, inflation is hitting every aspect of everyone's life. And so things that we would go out to bid for or were approved on the MPA, those prices are going up as well. So it's like we're getting hit from all sides. So I'm definitely open to any creative magical strategies to help us contain costs.
Okay. Anything from any other members? Anything else from any of the members of the committee? So thank you, Amy and Diane, for all the work you guys put into this. This is a really great start, I think, at least, of trying to understand the problems. I don't know if there's any questions from the public, either present in the room or online, or any of our administrators on Zoom. Okay. So, we're up to future meetings, date, agenda topics. So September 27th and October 11th are our currently scheduled meetings, and I assume October 26th, would that work?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
no, 25th. 14 plus 11 is
So
25.
October 11th, school improvement plan, strategic plan, and then part 2 of this, the one that we just had.
deficit.
Deficit reduction, part 2.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Sounds like fun. Any anything else for September 27th from anyone? What are we talking about then, Peter?
We'll get something on there for sure.
Dr. Sinchione, the strategic plan, that's not possible to move up to the 27th?
I'd asked, I'm working with our consultant schedule, and she could make the 27th.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask for motion to move into executive session.
Dr. Larkin?
Yep. Sorry.
Before you do that, if I could make a public announcement that, again, with much disappointment, because people are watching, and I know Ms. Delcourt's done a great job, I need to let people know that Bus 12 will not run tomorrow, both in the afternoon and in the morning. I want you to know that we're working our best with our bus company. I know this is painful for all of us, especially the people who are affected directly by that. And I'm hoping they're going to find a solution to this, but I wanted you to know, but I also wanted to make sure everyone, I know Ms. Delcourt's put it out there via phone and in multiple other ways, but it's not tenable, and it's unacceptable, and we're trying to rectify it.
Topic for discussion on the 27th?
Yeah.
Could be.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to move into Rhode Island General Law 4246, 5A1, job performance, character, physical or mental health, superintendent goals evaluation, and Rhode Island General Law 4246, 5A2, legal advice, litigation, policy for hiring and compensation.
Second.
Ask for a roll call vote. Mr. Dakotas?
Yes.
Mrs. Pavo?
Yes.
Mrs. Farnworth?
Yes.
Ms. Palish? Yes. I vote yes. We're in executive session.